Hey guys, Scott back again with you. Doing a what is style is slash beer dissection video. The what is style is going to be English bitters or English bitter. The beer dissection is from Lake Placid Pub and Brewery called Leaping Cow ESB. If you're not familiar with Lake Placid Brewing Company, if you followed my channel, you've seen that I've ordered in the past about 6 crowlers from them and did reviews of those beers. Well, recently I did the same thing. I got about 6 other different style beers other than my famous Ubu Ale, which wasn't something new. And I'm doing videos on those also. So Lake Placid Pub and Brewery obviously is up in Lake Placid, New York, just off of Main Street, I believe on Mirror Lake Drive. Big Slide Brewery is the same owners. They're just about a mile or 2 down the road, different menu of food and things like that. And they will be opening, might as well mention that in the fall, I believe, of 2023. I'm filming this around mid-March of 2023 in Saranac Lake, just down the road on 86, I believe. They're opening up another brewery. So if you are familiar, you're triathletes, like my roots, and you've been up in that area a lot, you know, the Saranac Lake one may not be as familiar to you, that they're opening up later in the year. But if you're up in the Lake Placid Brewery or Lake Placid area in the Adirondacks, definitely check Lake Placid Pub and Brewery and Big Slide. Now, the beer, like I said today, that I have from Lake Placid is Leaping Cow ESB. Now, what ESB stands for is called Extra Special Bitter, based upon the style, and what is style today is English bitter beer. Now, English bitters were pretty much a offshoot of India Pale Ale. Roughly in the 1800s, India Pale Ale, they started taxing beers by original gravity. Now, original gravity, for those of you who are not familiar with, is the amount of undissolved solutes or dissolved solutes within a solution. And they do a hydrometer and they take a reading. Well, they used to tax beers on that. And so they started producing lower alcoholic strength beers. And the bitter, which was kind of an offshoot of that. Now, according to the brewing judge or beer judge certification program, there's 3 types of bitter. There's a ordinary bitter, a best bitter, and then a strong bitter. And all that really changes is the alcoholic strength goes up slightly. The bitterness level kind of goes up slightly. The color kind of stays around the same. These beers should be anywhere from like kind of a gold to an amber color beer. So for example, the ordinary bitter is roughly 3.2 to 3.8. Best bitter is like 3.8 to 4.6. And then strong bitter is like 4.6 to roughly 6 or 6.2. So you can kind of get an idea that the alcoholic strength goes up. And then same thing with bitterness, IBU units, international bitterness units. I think the ordinary, if I remember correctly, is like 25 to 35 IBUs. Best is like 25 to 40. So you can see there's just an increase. So these will be a little more hop forward beers, but they will have more of a malt backbone than, say, some of the IPAs, even the English IPAs or American IPAs. The other thing worth mentioning about the bitters, English bitter, is usually in England, they are cask conditioned, most of them, if not all of them. And that is, you know, they put them in a barrel. There's what they call a shive and a spile that they kind of keep in there, and they use a beer engine in a lot of the pubs over there. Sometimes with a sparkler, they have like this swan neck looking thing. I'll try to maybe put a picture over my shoulder. I discussed this in one of my older videos. And so they call them bitter, but then when they bottle it, interesting, I think it's either the best or the strong bitter. When they bottle it, then it's called pale ale. And so you have bitters, which are usually cask conditioned, usually not very carbonated, and then when it's pale ale, it's usually the bottled version, like Bass Ale and things like that. Our American Pale Ale, like Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, and a lot of our IPAs and stuff really derived from the English bitter. And I discussed that again in one of my older videos. So again, English bitter is, a golden to amber beer, has a good malt backbone, but it also has, definitely is more hop forward. They usually use a lot of times Fuggles hops or East Kent Golding hops and things like that. And again, remember the fluctuation in alcoholic strength. And these usually are lower, as I just rambled off the ABVs for each one of those, compared to, say, some of your IPAs, and especially the US version. In the United States, we all have a tendency to hop things more and, boost up the alcoholic strength. I should mention that English bitter is typically with East Kent Golden hops and Fuggles hops. Those hops usually will give you more of an earthy, woodsy, herbal type of quality versus, say, some of the American hops that will be, a lot of times more fruity, citrusy, resiny, sometimes piney. Okay, so there is some overlap. Now this one today, the Leaping Cow ESB, which I have here, I keep showing the label like it's an original label, but I believe they use all East Kent Goldings, and it's registering at, let me just take my notes there, at 5.6% alcohol and 26 IBUs. So it's kind of sitting there in that best and strong bitter category, English strong, bitter, or best bitter category. Now, if you happen to see at your store, I think London Pride makes an ESB, or Fuller's makes an ESB. ESB, again, remember, is extra special bitter. That's the style you're looking for. So if you kind of give you a little guidance, if you're at your local beer store and they have some English imports. I think I could be mistaken. Old Speckled Hen is another one from England that, again, they may list it as an ESB, but because it's bottled, technically it's kind of a pale ale. But again, really the difference between English and American pale ale is really just the hop varietals, as well as sometimes the alcoholic strength. So anyway, guys, that was just a little information on English bitters, the three categories, and in the what is style for today's segment. So what I want to do now is open this bad boy open from Lake Placid Pub and Brewery, Leaping Cow ESB. I'm sure I'll have a few pictures popping over my shoulder. So I'm just going to be using kind of my kind of tulip, kind of a oblong tulip / modified Spiegeloo. But, a Mnemonic pint, tulip pint, even a shaker pint would probably work here fine. I like to use it, especially when I'm doing more of an analysis, something that has a little bit of a tulip shape. So you have that surface area for the hops and the aromatics to kind of come up to the top of the beer as kind of funneling towards the top. All right. So again, what is style? English bitter. And now we're going to open up our crowler here. Remember, crowlers are 32 ounce. If you haven't watched any of my other videos, 32 ounce cans of beer. They usually fill them up at the brewery and they seal them. Depends on who you ask. 7-10 days, it's ideally to try to drink these by. You can go a little longer than, say, a typical growler, but I wouldn't let it sit around for that long. Okay, so let me pour this in here. So I'm expecting this, being the ESB, it's going to be kind of that, like a best bitter, strong bitter category. So I'm expecting this is going to be kind of amber and things like that. So I'm going to give that a second to settle down a touch. Let me see if there was anything else I wanted to cover quickly before I go into it. I think I covered for the most part everything that I wanted for the what is style. So let's take a look at this. So we got this nice, frothy, tight bubbled tan to kind of beige foam, at least on my vantage point. Again, remember, we want it gold to amber, okay, which that's perfect. It's kind of like a medium amber color, very clear. It should be clear, not like a typical, say, American IPA or New England IPA. Again, this is more of an English pale ale / bitter. So, the color right now is spot on, as well as you got the frothy head is kind of spot on. I usually pour a little more aggressively these days, plus these crowlers kind of get shaken up a little bit. So I have a little bit more head than I would like on a typical point, but it's no knock to the beer. So let's take a look at that again. Pretty clear, okay? It's a very nice looking beer. I'm going to sound like an infomercial for Lake Placid Pub and Brewery and Big Slide, but if there's one thing I've said in other videos with them is if you don't like their beer, it's probably you don't like the style. Most everything I've ever had there is well brewed. It just may not be up your alley. I did a video on a jalapeno beer, a hot pepper beer, and I have one I haven't reviewed yet. It has like, it's almost like a Belgian. It's got Brettanomyces and things. So if you're interested in that, look for those videos. So let's take a sniff of the aroma. Yeah, so you definitely get that kind of woodsy, earthy, slightly herbal. Now, I've homebrewed with East Kent Golden hops, and that's what they're primarily using here. Versus, say, like the piney, citrusy grapefruit that you get with the Pacific Northwest hops, which you've watched some of those videos of mine if you have. So you kind of get that. In the malt, you know, there's definitely that medium toast, you know, graham cracker, maybe even like a light toffee, light caramel aroma there from the malt. I don't know what, you know, I don't know the grist here, but very nice. So, you know, I don't want to say butterscotch. It's not like a wee heavy, you know, which is like a Scottish ale, but it's got that light caramel, toffee, maybe even a slight nut on top of the, you know, with the malt profile. But the hops definitely, you can tell you're kind of English, or you're using an American equivalent to an East Kent Golding or Fuggles hop. Very nice. So anyway, guys, let's take a swig of this. Cheers. Oh, yeah. So again, even though this is a bitter, it has a lot of hoppiness, it has a substantial malt backbone to this. And that's what I kind of get here first. I kind of get that light caramel toast, medium toast, maybe even like biscuit, like a little bit overcooked biscuit kind of quality to the malt. You know, you still get that backup of the herbal, you know, hop flavor in there, herbal, earthy kind of, you know, hop character to it. You know, medium carbonation, probably more carbonated than you would get an English bitter in England or an Irish, you know, equivalent in Ireland, which is coming off of a you know, more cask conditioned beer. So there's usually a little bit lower carbonation. So this definitely has more carbonation than that. No alcoholic warmth. And what I say at roughly 5.5%, I probably said on the onset of the video, roughly that this is at. I'm not going to get any alcoholic warmth. So again, like I said, more of like a medium carbonation. On the aftertaste, again, you're left with that malt, that toast biscuit, you know, slightly, I don't want to say scorched biscuit, but like kind of an overcooked biscuit, or maybe the bottoms of those Pillsbury biscuits, graham cracker, you know, malt, with again some supportive herbal, floral character from the East Kent Golding hops. So you can definitely tell, if you're a home brewer, you can tell from this Leaping Cow ESB that this is more of an English style beer. A little creaminess. The bitterness is you know, moderate. And again, I think I said there were like 26 IBUs roughly from this one. Let me, excuse me as I just check real quick. Yeah, 26 IBUs, 5.6 alcohol. So, you know, to put in comparative speaking, if you get like a Munich Helles, like a Spaten, or, you know, original, those are 16 to 22. So it's a little more bitter than that, but not as bitter as maybe some of the Pilsner. But again, more of its perceived bitterness, because you want to balance between the malt as well as the IBU units. So it's not just strictly IBUs. You have a high IBU, but you have a lot of malt, your perceived bitterness is going to be lower, and then vice versa. Okay? Very nice though. This is a beer I could drink all day long because there's enough malt. You know, sometimes I get kind of tired of the strict American IPAs that just hit you with fruit juice and pineapple juice and grapefruit juice and all that orange. This has a nice, balance between the malt and the hops, and not too much alcoholic strength, so you're not going to drink one or two and feel like you're going to fall over the table. Again, remember, this is at 5.6, so it's a little higher. Again, it's more in that strong bitter category. But so I wouldn't call it like, a sessionable like they're 3.2 over in England, 3.2 to 3.6 or so. But definitely compared to a lot of beers we have on the market these days, coming from these craft breweries we have, it's still low enough. Now, pairing this, listen, why would I would probably stick this with typical fish and chips, right? The batter on the fish and the cod, with the malt profile here, we go very nicely. Your typical shepherd's pie, maybe not with necessarily lamb, but you could even just do it with beef or pork dishes. Pork dishes would be great. Pork chop, maybe, whether it's breaded or just like, say, a pork tenderloin with a nice glaze on it. This would kind of be very supportive, the intensity would balance itself out. But it has enough bitterness and that medium carbonation that it would cut through other things if you were going more like with something a little richer, or I should say like the fattiness from maybe the batter from the fish and chips, or French fries and things like that. So anyway, let me just take another pass on this. Again, guys, what is style was English bitter, ordinary, best, and strong bitter. You can rewind the video if you want to learn a little more about them again. Different intensities. We said the bitters over in England are usually a little more lower carbonated. They have, they're usually drawn off a cask conditioned ale. I can do a whole video on that, on cask conditioning. A little less carbonation, comes off a beer engine. Then when the bottled versions are usually, especially at the best and strong bitter, they kind of get into that pale ale category. And again, the English bitter, why they're so important is because a lot of the American IPAs or pale ales have come from that variety of beer. Anyway, and this one in particular from Lake Placid Pub and Brewery, Leaping Cow, ESB, spectacular beer. I'd give this another A here. Good balance between malt and bitterness from the hops. So again, this is not a hop bomb that you're gonna get smacked in the face. If you're looking for orange juice, grapefruit juice, mango, pineapple, this is not the beer for you. This is a good classic pale ale, using English hops, East Kent Goldings in particular for this one, or Fuggles. And again, kind of the starting point for a lot of the American beers. So check them out, Lake Placid Pub and Brewery, Big Slide Brewery, Leaping Cow. If you are interested in their beers, I have probably a whole repertoire of videos about them. Anyway, guys, till the next video, have a great one. Take care.